As you get settled in, I'd like to introduce our remote speaker today, Carol Davitt. She, as the executive director, she oversees the operations of the Missouri Prairie Foundation, a 57-year-old land trust, including Grow Native, its 23-year-old native plant marketing and education program. She has worked for 25 years in conservation and environmental communications, development, administration, and leadership roles for private and nonprofit conservation groups, and also municipal and state government. So she kind of crosses over lots of the groups who are present in the room today. Editor of the Missouri Prairie Journal since 1997, Carol writes articles on native gardening, has edited field guides, and enjoys speaking to groups about native gardening, prairie conservation, and related topics. So please let's welcome Carol Davitt.
I can't see any of you while I'm sharing my screen, so thank you for inviting me to speak, and I really appreciate you accommodating me to speak remotely. You all have such a well-known prairie reconstruction, roadside management activities that I'm not sure that any of my ideas will be of any help to you, because I think you have so many great things going, but in hopes that what I have to share might be helpful, I'll just dive in. So what I'm going to share with you today are some of the history and work strategies of the Grow Native program to increase the supply and demand for the supply of and demand for native plants and seeds, and perhaps some of these ideas will help you.
Carol, just a moment. Are you sharing your screen yet, or because we're not seeing your slides?
I'm so sorry. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Okay. So sorry about that.
No, it's good. It happens all the time.
Oh, now I see you all. Hello. Okay. Now I will share. Sorry about that. Okay. Here we go. So sorry. Let me back up. So. One thing I wanted to mention about this slide is the top photo is an original unplowed prairie that the Missouri Prairie Foundation owns and manages. And the bottom photo is prairie planting. And in all the work that we do, we like to emphasize the link between managing original habitats for many reasons, including that they are seed sources for the kinds of plantings that we all want to do. The Missouri Prairie Foundation is a 57-year-old prairie conservation organization and an accredited land trust. We protect original unplowed prairie remnants, we create prairie plantings, and we run the 23-year-old Grow Native Plant Marketing and Education Program, and we also administer the Missouri Invasive Plant Council. So the Grow Native program is a program, it's always been a program, it's not a separate organization, and we run it, and I'll talk more about that momentarily. So the beginning of the program, two friends, those two ladies pictured there, Cheryl on the left and Judy on the right, they, back in 1999, they wanted to establish a Missouri-based program that was similar to the National Wildlife Federation's Backyard Habitat Program, but they knew that a supply of affordable, accessible native plants would be needed. And it was housed for a while with the Conservation Federation of Missouri, which is a state affiliate of the National Wildlife Federation and an independent nonprofit NGO. They housed it for a while, but then those friends needed to find a new home for it, and the gentleman on the bottom there, George Seek, he was the first director of the Missouri Department of Conservation's Private Land Services Division. I think at the time it was the only private lands division within a state wildlife agency in the country, and he was very excited about the program, and he really advocated that the department take it on, which it did, and then the Department of Agriculture also became involved. So because of this, and also for other factors like cost-share programs, work of NRCS, demand for native seeds quickly grew because they were promoting the ecological benefits of native plants, so more seeds were needed. And so Grow Native program was an important catalyst for the organization of the Missouri Native Seed Association, and that really advanced the collection, growing, and availability of seed that was from Missouri, so it was Missouri Source Seed. And Trevor Bennett, he's the current president of the Missouri Native Seed Association. He was going to join me today, but unfortunately he was not able to. But he's a really good resource, and I think Laura has his contact information, so you might want to reach out to him for specific questions that I might not be able to answer. So through all of these efforts, instead of having to buy seed from other states or even out of the country, there were more growers and collectors providing Missouri native seed. So I'm going to share 11 years of the Grow Native program in one slide. So these years, 2000 to 2011, were when the program were under the auspices of the state. And it focused on growing consumer demand and increasing supply. It developed a logo that you see there, but without the tagline. That "Keeping Nature Near" is a tagline that we added later on. So it had lots of visibility. The Missouri Department of Conservation has a magazine, a free magazine that has a readership of something like 1 million people. So they had Grow Native articles in that magazine. They led public tours to native gardens. They had established a native garden challenge, kind of like a front yard makeover type of a thing, where a yard went from just turf to native plantings, and that generated interest. And they had professional development. They reached out to garden centers and nurseries that currently weren't selling native plants and encouraged them to do so. So they really, really did a lot of work in those early years. They developed plant tags, like the plastic tags you get in potted plants that you buy, because there weren't any tags at that time for native plants, really. So they developed tags for over 200 species of native plants. And so, all with the Grow Native logo on them. So you go into a garden center, you're seeing that logo. So there's a lot of brand visibility. They also developed a searchable native plant database, so you could search for native plants for shade or for sun or for whatever. And they had a staff person with the Department of Conservation and a staff person with the Missouri Department of Agriculture, and all the funding was from the state. And this photo there is a portion of a native garden that was established in those early years at the Missouri State Fairgrounds. So that was really nice to have, a native garden and the Grow Native logo and everything right there in this, this iconic fairgrounds. So that was helpful. So then in 2011, the Department of Conservation was managing the program by itself. The Department of Ag was not involved anymore, and I'm not really sure why, because I wasn't involved at that time. So anyway, in 2011, the Department of Conservation was looking for a new home for the program. While there were a lot of advantages to having a program under the auspices of the state, there were some things that were confining about it, like maybe harder to work with private entities for sponsorships and things like that. So they started looking around for other entities that might want to take up the program. And so we were interested, and we were sort of vetted by them, and so the Prairie Foundation was chosen. And one of the first things we did is we expanded the service area from within the boundaries of Missouri to expanding into the lower Midwest, which by our definition includes Southwest, West Illinois, Northern Arkansas, Eastern Kansas, but we have growers from Southern Iowa. We have members who are in Iowa as well. As long as they're doing business in Missouri and are working primarily with plants that are native to the rest of the lower Midwest. And we have members from Kentucky and Oklahoma, but they're working with people in Missouri or other parts of the lower Midwest. So they're included. So the way we operate is we have a committee of 20 members from various disciplines, including horticulture, conservation, transportation, agriculture, groups like Wild Ones. And so we have quarterly meetings, and those members are expected to attend. We don't have dedicated Grow Native staff per se. We have Missouri Prairie Foundation staff, and all of us, almost all of us, a portion of our time, we work on Grow Native stuff. So, you had administrative functions and, outreach functions and stuff like that. Well, we have that. We have functions. We have tasks. We have those same tasks for our MPF work. So, our administrative person does Grow Native administration stuff, and MPF, and outreach does. So it just makes sense to do it that way. And so staff do a lot of the development of our materials, but we have a very active committee members, and they'll volunteer to events and review documents and lots of different things. Then we also have 13 advisors who are not required to attend meetings, but they often do, and they include representatives from places like the St. Louis Metropolitan Sewer District, academia, other disciplines. And these are people, many of them are working in the business, so they have a vested interest because it's their livelihood. So everything that we can do to promote native plants is helping their business. Then we further expand our reach by being involved with other collaboratives like Missourians for Monarchs, the Missouri Environmental Education Association, and so forth. It just helps build networks and messaging. So also since we've had the program, so here's just some more information about how we run the program. So we have a Grow Native dedicated budget within the MPF budget. So if somebody donates to the Grow Native program, specifically that is restricted to the Grow Native program, but it's all administered by MPF. So when we first started out, we had $13,500, and this year we have like $241,000. The funds come from our professional members, so we have 180 professional members, and they all pay $100 a year or more, $150 if they want to buy the plant tags, and then a number of them are sponsors at higher levels. So with sponsorship, they get greater levels of visibility and additional benefits. We also get some donations from individuals, like when we send out renewal notices for membership to our MPF members, we offer them the opportunity, would you like to make an extra donation to the Grow Native program? We have free webinars, but a lot of times people will donate, something if they're a Grow Native webinar, and that's another source. We sell a small amount of merchandise like garden books and garden signs. And what we do is we split our administrative costs 75 to 25% with MPF. So, instead of, if you're a standalone organization, you're going to have, the various, maybe you'll have general liability insurance, and you'll have, an accounting costs and, auditing costs, things like that. Well, by being housed within the organization of MPF, we are just paying 25% of those costs, because the Grow Native budget is about 25% of our overall budget. We created a Grow Native strategic plan in 2016 through that guided our work through 2020, and our current plan is through 2025. We note accomplishments in our plan quarterly, so we really pay attention to our plan to keep on track. We also have in addition to our quarterly committee meetings, we have small group meetings on specific programs and projects as needed. We have monthly native landscaping articles in various gardening magazines and other magazines. We've developed many fact sheets, brochures, we share them at festivals, conservation offices. We even have a car dealership that has native plants, and they're a sponsor, and they're very into it. And they have blood drives, and they pass out all of our information. And we have since we have in-person workshops, and then since the pandemic, we started webinar master classes online, and those are really popular, and we continue to do those. Like the first year we had live attendance of more than 10,000 people for the whole year, and we still have like 4,000, like last year we had 4,000 live attendance of 4,000, plus another 4,000 people have watched our programming on recordings of it on our YouTube channel. We also organize native plant sales at remote locations around the state. When I say remote, I mean not at a nursery, but like the parking lot of Bass Pro Shops or whatever, just different places. We do education and marketing to diverse audiences to grow demand. And probably we spend the most time on, I would say, like the general public homeowners audience, but that also includes some parks and recreation professionals, landscape professionals, and the messages there are, native plants are beautiful, they support nature's web of life, sense of place, mental health benefits of being with nature. Those are the primary messages, but also stormwater management as well. And so I'm going to just show you some of the ways that we reach this audience. So of course, the Talony message, host plants, nature's web of life, insects need native plants, specific native plants, and birds and other animals are feeding those insects to their young. So that's, a message that fascinates and resonates with homeowners and gardeners. We produce the Grow Native Resource Guide every year online. It's searchable online and also as a PDF, and then also we print 25,000 copies. It's a directory of all the products and services of our professional members. And so this is geared, mostly for individual homeowners, but professionals use it as well, because we have if you're a wholesaler, you're listed, we have a column or we have a symbol for wholesale. Then, in addition to those 200 different plant tags for individual species, it was around 2016, we developed a special series of plant tags called Monarch Cafe, and I think it's the first time plant tags ever really featured an insect-plant relationship. So we developed these in partnership with Monarch Watch in Kansas, and we have tags for eight species of, or maybe it's 8, maybe there's one that's not pictured on here, 8 species of milkweed. And then, there's so many plants, of course, about pollinating insects, but, as people are learning more about the plight of native bees, and they just want to know I need to help pollinators, we developed this pollinator buffet series of tags to help people just sort of starting out. And you'll see we have months of the year, like March, April, May, June, July. You'll see that in that curve on the tags, and we did that to help people, realize you need to support pollinating insects throughout the growing season and really promoting planting natives spring through fall. We try to help reach people at where they are at all levels, like beginners. So we have these top 10 lists for 30 different lists, like top 10 natives for shade, for clay soil, or what have you. Just to help people who are starting out and they kind of feel overwhelmed by how many native plants they could choose from. We really encourage well-maintained native landscapes because we want native plants to be as mainstream as possible. And so we want people to think about, what they like, in what look do they like, and think about, landscaping with natives just as they would with any other kind of landscaping. And, to sort of dispel some of these myths, like native plants really do need to be maintained. And then, people spend hours mowing grass, and so why shouldn't they spend hours taking care of their natives? But just to think about, native plantings are really working for you, whereas if you have a lawn, you're really working for your lawn. So we try to, convey these sorts of questions and conversations going. We have, things to emphasize beauty of plants, how to design with native plants, like this article. Native plants with same bloom period document. We have these front yard formal designs. This one's for full sun. This one's for shade, to really get people thinking, you don't have to have native plants just like in this back corner of your yard. They don't have to be messy. You can showcase them in your front yard. And then we have 12 or so individual garden templates like this. Here's one for butterfly garden, songbird garden, frog pond garden. We promote native container gardening, like this. We developed this native landscape care calendar, one page to help people think about maintaining their landscapes throughout the year. Promoting, optimizing the ecological functionality of their gardens by leaving plant material through the winter, and explaining why that's important for bee nesting habitat. We create these garden signs that we sell to help people convey the importance of their native landscaping. We have a Grow Native Gardens of Excellence program for, we have, 20 sites so far in the lower Midwest in this program, or this is from our website. You can click on each one, learn about what plants are there, how it was designed, how it's maintained, who maintains it. We really want people to visit these places and see examples of well-maintained native landscaping. Another audience is farmers, and the message there is primarily, native forage for grazing, prairie strips for water quality, soil, that says production, so let's just say protection, pollinator habitat to safeguard fruit and vegetable yields. So, we help promote the Prairie Strips program out of Iowa, native plants for cattle forage. Another audience, planners, municipality professionals, and those messages are primarily about using natives to manage stormwater, to store carbon, to bring nature in the city, protect pollinator habitat, and for the beauty that native plants impart and, the mental health benefits of, natural surroundings. So things like, promoting native plants and medians and using native plants for stormwater management like you see in this parking lot photo. Some other projects that we've been doing here in the last just few years is, as native plants become more popular, you're seeing big companies create native plants where you find out they're actually nativars. So we wanted to just really explore this and help people understand the difference between native cultivars and nativars. We're not saying across the board that nativars are bad. We've consulted different, like the county, and we've consulted tons of research about nativars, and we just tried to provide education about what these mean, what these terms mean. Some other projects we're working on include native plants for stormwater projects in the lower Midwest. We're also developing a design elements search function for our native plant database to encourage greater use of native plants by landscape architects and designers. Because what happens is our Grow Native Committee chair is a trained landscape architect, and she explained, their time is billable in increments of 15 minutes, and they don't have much time to search for plants. So if they have a search function where they can quickly key in on different design elements that they want, they will, because those kinds of data tools are available for non-native plants, just plants that are conventionally used in landscaping, so we need that for native plants as well, a kind of a search function. So in summary, what I would advise to anybody wanting to do the kind of work we've done is build an effective, goal-oriented, diverse team. As I mentioned, our committee is composed of people making a living from natives and people passionate about natives, educators, people with marketing experience, and much more. Build a unifying brand, stay visible, increase demand. So let consumers know the benefits of natives, let consumers know where they can find them, let them know what to plant where, how to design and steward, showcase highly biodiverse and well-maintained examples of native landscaping, create resources for all levels of gardeners, and communication with groups like NRCS technical committees, be aware of cost share programs, which I'm sure you all are already doing that, of programs that will stimulate demand for more native seed. Work on increasing supply, help professionals continue learning, and document successes. Document the history of your programs. Survey to members or to consumers or members about the growth of their business. Find ways to find out what is it that consumers want to know. And then if you could only do a few things, I narrowed this down a little bit. I had a problem narrowing it down a lot, but in blue were things that I would say are especially important. The building an effective team, staying visible. I really had a hard time cutting things down and increasing demand and supply. I mean, that's the whole point of it. It is important to help professionals continue learning. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It can be, having a field trip to a really well-maintained native planting and having the person who established it, explain what they did, what they would have done differently. And that's all I have for you. I've just gone a little bit over 20 minutes. Here, I can go back to that slide, but here's my contact information if you want to contact me. Lauren has my information too. But I'll go back to this screen in case this is helpful. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions you have.
Okay, Carol, I think I'm sitting in a place where you can see me. I'm going to take a microphone around to anybody with questions, but we just have a couple of minutes here. Or wait, Andy's going to do that for me. There. Any questions?
I'm sorry, it's a little bit garbled. I heard you were the Xerces Society.
Hi, Carol. Yeah, we got a different mic. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Stephanie Frischi with the Xerces Society. Thank you for your presentation. I had a couple questions, but I'll just choose one here, and maybe that goes along with staying visible and the Grow Native name. You use the exclamation mark there for your program. Doug Ptolemy's Homegrown National Park is also grownative.org, and I think other states have that. What could you say about maybe unifying that message versus keeping the separate identities of each of those movements?
You mean like unifying Ptolemy's Homegrown National Park and Grow Native? Is that what you said? I couldn't hear real well.
Yes, I think it's partly like an intellectual property question, that name of Grow Native.
Oh, yeah, so, yeah, the Grow Native name is a registered trademark, as is our tagline. I think it was the first program of its kind in the country. So, I mean, it would just be a lot of work for us to change it. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question correctly, but I mean, I think it was the first in the country, so I'm not sure. And it's a registered trademark, so and it was legal. We got the program, so.
Yeah, I think if I can interpret here, and I'm speaking into the right mic right now, I think it might have been, Stephanie's question was about maybe unifying some of the efforts around a single name as opposed to having those separate names. Is that how you understood the question?
Say like Wild Ones, for example.
Like that, so Wild Ones, we've got Homegrown National Park, we have your Grow Native. Would it be possible to have like a unified national brand for that?
I guess I'd say why. I mean, plants are not national in scope; they're regional. I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, they're small, relatively small groups. They come up with an idea, they have an identity, then the idea catches on. There's other groups. I mean, that's just the way everything is. I mean, and then somebody wants to unify it, but then everybody else remembers they have an identity with what they knew before. So I think isn't it more important that people if people regionally are connecting to a group and that group is helping them create good actions, does it matter that there's one brand or there's 20 brands, right? I mean, it's about the effectiveness of programs, not really about the name. And I think, so I guess that's my answer, is if something's working, why change it? And the Backyard National Park, I mean, really that's a national brand, right? So I guess I just don't see why. I think that's just human nature. People come up with an idea, they create a group, they create an identity, then other groups have similar ideas or slightly different. I mean, people have said to me, well, why don't all conservation groups just all come together? Well, it's just people connect different things in different ways, like Quail Forever and Nature Conservancy, and lots of groups do similar things, but they have each have their own identities. I mean, it's like, why not all law firms get together and just work under one law firm, right? I mean, we don't say that about doctors or lawyers, so why should we say that about conservation groups?
Okay. Carol, I think we're basically out of time for questions, but thank you for sharing your contact information, and I can put people in touch with you if need be. But I thank you for the stimulating ideas. We've had some folks here in past years who have brought up this idea in discussion about having more collaboration on native plant marketing in Iowa. And so this is certainly giving me lots of ideas, and I hope that that's resonating with other people. And I would invite everybody to thank Carol for joining us remotely today.
Expanding our region into more of Iowa. I mean, if that would help you, we've already got all sorts of stuff in place. I'm not saying that we have the world's best ideas, but we've done a lot of work already. you know, so, you know, if at least southern Iowa, you know, in terms of plant geography, I mean, please, let's have a conversation.
Awesome, yeah, that conversation will happen. My ears are perked up, and hopefully other people in the room are thinking the same thing. So,
Okay, thank you so much.
Again. All right, have a great day. Okay, at this point, we'll switch out of the Zoom, okay? And I'd invite Lance to come on up, and I'll see about getting your slides set up. Lance grew up in rural southwest Iowa. He has a bachelor's degree in urban studies from the University of Minnesota and a master of public administration from the University of Nebraska-Omaha. Lance started as a project coordinator with Golden Hills in 2014 and moved into the deputy director position in 2022. He leads a variety of projects focusing on wildlife habitat and low-impact outdoor recreation. He's on the board of directors for the Iowa chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Iowa Prairie Network, Pottawatomie County Trails Association, and chair of the Les Hills Alliance Stewardship Committee. Lance currently lives in the Les Hills and enjoys spending as much time outdoors as possible. All right, thank you, Lance.
Thank you. So do I just push the button on here? Change?
Yeah, I can just click it.
Okay. So, as she said, I'm Lance with Golden Hills RC&D. We're a small nonprofit based in southwest Iowa, and we work in 6 primary areas: land stewardship, outdoor recreation and tourism, water resources, local foods, community partnerships, arts and culture. So these are those 6 areas, and then all the projects within those areas color-coded, so you can see we do a wide variety of things. The area where we work, this map has the blue outlined area is the original 8 counties identified in our bylaws. There used to be RC&Ds around the state. Many of them have closed. There's nothing north of us, so some of our projects have extended north. The darker the color, the more projects we have. So the light pink is one project in those counties. As you can see, the southwest is our primary area, but going north all the way up to Plymouth County and the Les Hills is where we work, and then even beyond that with some of our projects, including 3 scenic byways. So I'll talk a little bit about prairies and the Les Hills and our role with the SEED project. So you're probably all aware in this room of what the different types of prairie are, but remnants are those that have never been plowed. So in the Les Hills, we have more than half of those remnant prairies in the whole state. So because of the rough topography, they were never farmed. Even though 99.9% of Iowa's prairies are gone, more than half of what is left is in the Les Hills. And then I have the landform map here. So the Missouri floodplain is different than the Les Hills, and then the southern Iowa drift plain is different, but those are kind of the 3 primary areas where we work. But the SEED project is specifically Les Hills. Can we watch a video, or do you think it'll work? Or it's just a 2-minute video about the Les Hills site. See if it works.
The issues facing working landscapes are especially evident in the fragile Les Hills of western Iowa. Les is a German word meaning loose, and it's the name of the soil that creates these majestic hills. The Les Hills span about 200 miles north to south along the Missouri River in Iowa. The depth and concentration of Loess deposits found here are only rivaled in certain areas of China. This makes the Loess Hills unique and globally significant. Endangered plants and animals like the 10-petaled blazing star and the ornate box turtle are found on these lands. Lush and rare prairie grasses and flowers are plentiful. But the Loess soil is fragile, mainly due to its fine, gritty consistency. This soil is extremely sensitive to water. In fact, you may have thought that water first formed these hills, as it did many of the mountains and landforms in this country. But the Loess Hills are special. They were first formed by wind. 12 to 30,000 years ago, glaciers were moving and melting over parts of the Iowa landscape and the states to the north. Due to the changes in temperature, the front of the glaciers would melt in the summer and huge amounts of meltwater would flow down the Missouri River Valley. But in the wintertime, water flow was significantly reduced and lots of sandbars and silt material were left exposed on the floor of the valley. Winds from the west were very strong during these times. They would whip through the Missouri Valley, pick up the exposed silt material, and deposit it on the east side of the valley. This cycle repeated over thousands of winters until, about 12,000 years ago, the glaciers disappeared and the wind diminished. And in their wake, the Loess Hills emerged. Of course, the erosive power of water eventually played a role too. Creeks and rivers, fed by rainwater and snowmelt, carved most of the distinctive shapes of the Loess Hills that we see today. Small towns, big cities, farmers, business owners, parks and preserves combine to make the Loess Hills a huge working landscape. Even though humans have worked this land for hundreds of years, its unique qualities have only come into the limelight in the last 30 years. Awareness of the current threats has also been heightened. Threats like erosion, mining, urban sprawl, poor conservation practices, and bad land use decisions.
Okay, so that was just kind of a summary, better than I would explain the formation of the Loess Hills. This is a map of Loess distribution. So the Loess Hills, you can see the red on the western side of Iowa. There's a few places in Nebraska and then along the Mississippi and Tennessee that have really deep loess. But loess soil is common around the country and the world. People say the Loess Hills of Iowa are only, or something similar is only found in the Yellow River Valley of China, but loess soil is not rare. So people sometimes get confused and think that loess itself is unique, but it's the Loess Hills that are unique. So as that described, unique and globally significant, a lot of remnant prairies, just too steep to farm or develop. So they've been relatively, compared to most of the rest of Iowa, undisturbed. Within the Loess Hills, so the green on the map, it's kind of hard to see there, that's the Loess Hills landform. So the landform is defined by at least 60 feet of loess soil. Then within that, there's special landscape areas, and those are the orange on the map. So those are areas that are like kind of exemplary sites. When you think of the Loess Hills, you're probably picturing one of those SLAs. So they have the kind of the most rugged terrain and the largest amounts of remnant prairies. And a lot of the special landscape areas are protected compared to the rest of the Loess Hills. There's a lot of public lands and private land easements within those orange areas. So these are kind of common across the state, but we have urban development around, especially around Council Bluffs and Sioux City, where there's a lot of acreages and subdivisions being built in the Loess Hills. People do try to farm really steep terrain that should not be farmed, and people overgraze sometimes. So these are all issues. And as you can see in this photo, which I took on Monday, this is Broken Kettle Grasslands, the largest remnant prairie in Iowa, owned and managed by the Nature Conservancy. That part of Iowa, especially, if you look at the early survey maps, had very few trees. It was almost 100% prairie. Not the case anymore. Lots of woody invasives moving in. So cedars, dogwood, sumac, and they do, a lot of land management there, but they're still limited by staff and capacity. So there's woody encroachment happening all throughout the Loess Hills. Loess is highly erodible. So these two pictures, I took the one in the middle. That was a farm pond that the dam started to erode, and then there's this giant cavernous waterfall there now. And then this is, I think, in Mills or Fremont County. But it's interesting, and I think it has something to do with there's a lot of quartzite in the soil, and it's crystalline columnar structure. So if it's cut vertically, it'll withstand. It can stand straight for a really long time without eroding. But if it's at an angle, then it is highly erosive. So those road cuts, there's a lot of road cuts like that in the Les Hills where there's vertical walls, and they're relatively stable. So as I said, a lot of places you can't get to with a tractor. The seed harvesting that we've done has all been by hand. Even UTVs can't reach a lot of these ridges. And then it's tall grass prairie, but we do have some short or mixed grass species that really aren't found elsewhere in Iowa. So I'll just go through a few of those and have the maps from Bonap. So yucca is one not really found outside of the Les Hills in Iowa, but really common to the west. I don't know how to pronounce that Latin name, but I've heard it. Scarlet globe mallow and cowboy's delight, and that's been found in a few places in the Les Hills. Again, more of a western and kind of desert species. Cutleaf iron plant, again, Les Hills, a little bit up in northwest Iowa along the Little Sioux River Valley, but primarily Les Hills. 9-anther dahlia, lotus milk vetch, and then skeleton plant. That's one I really like. It's some places in the Les Hills it is fairly common, but again, mostly found west of there. So we started harvesting seed in 2018. We work with volunteers. The first one we ever did was at Hitchcock Nature Center, and we've done quite a few there since then. That's a county park in Pottawatomie County. But we've also worked with county conservation boards throughout the Les Hills and DNR and even some private landowners too. We've been working through, as a nonprofit, we're primarily dependent on grants, so we just keep finding different grants to keep the project growing and continuing. Last year we had a total of 148 people volunteer at our seed harvest events. They're all free events, all ages are welcome. We do have families come with their kids. DNR and county conservation boards kind of have their own rules. With DNR, it's a lot more strict. They don't let, you're not supposed to take seed off the property. So if we do something at a state park or wildlife area, that seed is all given to the DNR staff there. We don't take it off site, but they use it for their restoration work. DNR or CCBs are more flexible usually, so they'll sometimes let us keep a small amount, and then we've done seed packets in the past, and we have a partnership with Iowa Western Community College in Council Bluffs where we do, they let us propagate some of the native plants in their greenhouse. So some of the species that we target are those Les Hills ones that aren't found elsewhere that are really hard to find. You can't really go buy them somewhere. And then most of the seed harvests we've done has been in the fall, so we're trying to get more of those early blooming spring and summer species. We've done a little bit with some of the savanna and woodland species, but primarily prairie. Sedges are one that I have not gotten much of, and I need to learn my sedge ID better, but they're just hard to find, I think, and when the seed is ready, it's often, you really have to get down there and look to find the seed. So we'd like to do more sedges. And then a lot of those species are also, they're just hard to get to. You have to really climb, scramble up a hill to find that cowboy's delight and risk falling 100 feet down the bluff. So they're really tricky to access some of those seeds. We've been working with several partners, including Les Hills State Forest. They built these raised beds, and those are all Les Hills ecotype native plants that are growing there. And we started working with some private landowners too to develop small seed plots. Again, it's been tricky with the scale, so some of those species, you might go out and find a few plants and get a few handfuls of seed, which could be several hundred plants, but it's still not going to do, significant amount of acres of land restoration. So that's been one of the challenges. Timing of seeds, so some of them like prairie violet, they kind of explode and you have to be there that day to get them. So that's been a challenge. Knowing, especially for some of the ones that aren't as common, knowing exactly where there are good populations. So I've been trying to use some different apps to map those out when I find a good stand of certain species. We try to limit, not take more than roughly a third of the seed that we find. But if it's a more rare and endangered species, even less than that. And then, like I said, this scaling up has been a challenge especially so for those less common species. We've also done some events where we have seed cleaning and seed processing, and we've done a seed school that was all about seed saving. We did a farm tour at Buman's last spring, and that was really fun to see what they're working on. Created a giant spreadsheet that is kind of overwhelming, but it's got 500 or so species of plants, and we did include some non-native and invasive species, so it's sort of color-coded. The green is ones that the Potawatomi County Conservation staff are really targeting. They'd like to get more of those seeds. The white is kind of good, but not necessarily a target species. And then we have some that are color-coded red, and those are the ones that are either invasive or highly aggressive that we don't necessarily want to target. The spreadsheet has information about where they grow, what types of soil moisture, and then information about when they flower and when the seeds are ripe. So it's, like I said, it is a lot of information, but it can be sorted. So if you're looking for seeds that are ready in August, you can sort it by month and find those. And then we created it's just a Google Doc, but information about some of the other uses of native plants. So it does not include like medicinal or edible purposes, but things like fuel and fiber. There's been a lot of research on using native plants for biofuels. And there's a company in western Nebraska that uses milkweed floss for comforters, which I thought was interesting. So there's I think it'd be really cool to have more native plants, used as crops for different uses. So that link has a Google Doc with links to other resources. And I have some flyers up here if anybody's interested I have one for that, and it has a QR code, so you can look at just go to the link. The last 3 winters, we've done classes with Dr. Tom Rosberg about plant ID and botany, and that's been a really good activity in the winter when people are cooped up. We started in 2021 when COVID was still rampant, so it's been a nice way to spend some winter evenings. They're all about 60 to 90 minutes, and they are all recorded, so all the previous ones are on our website, and this series from this winter will be posted later this month or early next month when they're all finished. And that's been helpful too for seed harvest volunteers who maybe aren't as familiar and want to help with the seed harvest but don't know the plants as well. And the last one that you might be interested in is Seedling ID. That's March 23rd, and it's $10 registration. So I mentioned we're working with Iowa Western Community College. They have a greenhouse that is not really used. They used to have a horticulture program that ended. It's just been kind of empty for a while, so they've been letting us use that for the last couple of years. And so we're using some of the seed that we harvest and then doing a native plant sale in the spring. Not seed related, but I thought some of you might be interested. So we have a Lust Hills hiking guide. A lot of those places I mentioned, you can see on this map here, those are all public places. I think just about every single one of those has a remnant prairie too. So if you're looking for a place to go wander around, find some prairie, again, this is all online. It's a free resource. And then we've done an annual event. This is the 3rd year of the Low-High Trek. So Low-High is short for Lust Hills. Kelly Madigan hiked the entire length from South Dakota to Missouri in 2020. And then we worked with her we thought this is something that there was a lot of interest in. There's not a trail specifically the whole length, but we're working with different partners like TNC. So this year we'll be up at we'll go through Broken Kettle Grassland and then several state areas, some county parks. And last year we did through the Lust Hills State Forest, and then the year before we were in Monona County. So eventually we'll probably have hiked through the entire length of the Les Hills or close to it. Registration filled though in the first day, so there's a wait list if you want to sign up for that, but we are planning to continue it annually and may end up doing some other hiking events later this year. So these are all the resources that I've talked about already, and I can send this out if anyone wants the links directly. So that's all I got. Any questions?
Thank you. You had mentioned working with producers to maybe increase some of that supply. What does that look like for folks who may be interested?
So far we've just had, it was primarily people who have attended a seed harvest, but then we did like a Facebook post just asking for interest. And we got a few people who were interested. So far it's been people like on a really small scale that, not necessarily farmers or producers, but more like, I have some space in my yard, I want to try to grow some native plants and I'll harvest some of the seed for you. So far it's been really small scale, but I'm definitely interested in scaling up. Like I said, the amount of seed that we have of local ecotype has been one of the challenges. Yeah, so that's, yeah. So we did so far we have the raised beds, and then there's a few, like I said, a few growers who are growing on a very small scale, but that production aspect is something we'd really like to scale up for those Les Hills species especially, because a lot of the species that are common throughout Iowa are pretty easy to get seed for, but it's those really endemic ones that are really hard to find. So yeah, we're partnering, Golden Hills doesn't own or manage any of the properties, but we partner with the DNR and CCB, so it's primarily for their restoration and reconstructions.
Oh, okay, and then, so then my next question is with, like what kind of storage facilities do you guys have for holding over any seed? I mean, are you guys just holding over like an ice cream bucket worth of seed, or are you guys getting bags of seed, and then what kind of storage facilities
Yeah,
do you have?
that's I should have said that. That's probably another big challenge. So far, we don't have like a walk-in cooler or anything. Most of the seed that we've been harvesting, we've given to the DNR or county conservation. The amount that we have currently stored is really small, just like paper bags full, pretty much. So.
I'll just answer or ask the question that I was going to ask. So that's good. Any other questions before?
There's probably, is there a gap between how much you can produce from Les Hills local seed and the demand for that seed? Would DNR counties use more seed if they can get it?
Yep. So that's kind of originally how this started. Was the county conservation board said we want more local ecotype. We're not finding it from the producers that are growing native plants and seeds.
So are they then buying it from outside the region, or are they just not planting?
I think primarily buying from whatever's available in Iowa. So.
Do you think they would pay more if they could get that local seed, or would a producer have to compete with the general market?
That's a good question. I would say probably for some of those really rare and unique ones, they would pay more.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of it they're buying from some of the producers who are here.
They could
So
get Cowboys Delight from further west.
yeah,
If they wanted to, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the question is, would it be viable to start up production of Lost Hills,
Right.
Cowboys and the like?
Yeah. And on that line, another question I have, and I don't know if anyone here has soil expertise, but I've talked with a few people about the mycorrhizal web and that kind of stuff, and the unique makeup, the nutrients and stuff in the loess soil, and if it would be smart to try to incorporate that into the production plots, or if we're planting in a greenhouse, to incorporate some loess soil, because if we're using seed from a loess remnant prairie and putting it into potting soil that's made somewhere else, I don't know.
Thanks.
All right, let's thank Lance for. And we need to welcome Pauline Rodney here. For some of you, she may need no introduction because she's been doing this prairie thing maybe the second or third longest since the.
Yep, Daryl and I.
Yeah. And so let's see. But for those of you who don't know Pauline already, Pauline is a prairie biologist with 4 decades of experience in restoring remnant and reconstructing planted prairie and savanna throughout the Midwest, and particularly in Iowa as the first biologist at Neil Smith National Wildlife Refuge. Recently retired from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, she has led efforts to develop prairie reconstruction and savanna restoration monitoring protocols. Pauline has recently authored a chapter in a book entitled Tending Iowa's Land, edited by Cornelia Nuttall, and has written numerous scientific papers and technical reports in her career. Pauline continues the work of healing the prairie and savanna ecology on 130 acres of land with her husband and son, and continues to provide consultation to others on similar journeys. It's because of Pauline's experience with this developing monitoring protocols that I asked her to talk with us today. It's one thing to get the seed out in the ground. It's a whole other thing to know that you've got a growing prairie. So, Pauline?
Well, I assume that everyone who's here has either directly planted a prairie or has had some role in planting prairies, either making plans for it or maintaining it, managing a planted prairie afterwards. And assuming that, everybody, 100% of the people here know and have been a part of that. So, how many of you have ever had all successful, wild, wonderful prairie plantings? Dan does. Of course. I should have known. I should have known. Dan's also a liar. Okay, we'll do it this other way. How many have, or who has ever had something that didn't go right or had a bad result? Okay, tell me, somebody give me an example of something that didn't go right. What happened? And I don't mean, like, what made you think this isn't a good result?
Very little was coming up. We had a few sedges that showed up, but after further looking at it, we think it's one of 2 things. Either A lot of herbicide holdover in the soil, or I really, really think it might be a soil type to hydrology non-matchup, because the area has been had drainage ditches put through it that I'm convinced have drastically changed the hydrology of the property, because the ditches are so deep that they're they're 15 feet deep. If you're standing in the bottom of them, you can't jump and touch the top. They're so deep.
Okay, thank you. Someone else?
Didn't get the existing vegetation removed well enough or terminated.
Okay, so then, all right.
Site prep, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
We've had invasive species like birdfoot trefoil, just rapid colonization.
Who said that? And then, and so you've had that in your prairie planting.
Like a deer reconstruction, crop field, and then all of a sudden we're just dealing with this birdfoot trefoil that we didn't realize was as bad as it was.
They didn't realize it was there, so that's something that was okay. Someone else?
Unfavorable weather patterns.
Weather patterns. Okay. And so, okay, I'm going to put that here. Weather bad. I'll just say that. Weather was bad. All right, yeah.
I had worked along the right of way, but I had soil brought in, and it had a lot of weed seed in it. And since it was more established than my native seeds, that's all that popped up.
So that's happening when you're getting ready to plant? You put that, okay. Let's see, soil, importing soil. Imported soil. Seeds. Anyone else? One more? Okay, okay. And then was that erosion there before you started, or was that something that?
I've seen Fields Gully where we planted, and then the gully obviously fails.
Okay.
And it might have been gully, it was certain gully before we started.
Okay, so there was something there that was, okay.
We level it out and plant and then re-gully. Or other seeds wash it down.
Yeah. All right, what about, yes?
About unknown seed quality.
Oh, yeah. Okay, here's a related question. So we have a good prairie, and then it goes downhill from there. Has anybody had that experience? Yes?
Yeah.
Sarah?
I was just thinking of a DNR property that they had reconstructed that was really like high quality, and now it's being taken over by Cerisi and Los Pizza.
Uh-huh.
They're grappling with what to do.
Okay, so invasives management. All right, somebody else have one that would, yeah. Some with what? Aggressive natives. Yeah.
I can piggyback on that one.
Yep.
Where we, hand collected off of remnant hill prairies and planted that seed on, not a hill prairie site, but still a dry, level site in the same general area. And I swear we picked like 10 Indian grass seeds, but the whole thing's covered in Indian grass. And it's just like, where did it all come from?
And this you discovered after you've planted and it's down the road. Okay. Where did the big blues come from? Indian grass. Thick. Okay. All right, so I'll tell you one of my bad stories. So I planted probably hundreds of plantings, and most of them were at Neil Smith National Wildlife Refuge, as I was the first biologist there and trying to figure out how to do things. And one planting was, they varied. They varied in terms of quality. Some of them were just really grass heavy, and some had pretty good forb diversity in it, and kind of figured out through time that planting in the dormant season and broadcast seeding had an entirely different result than the things we've been doing with drills. But there was one planting that was, you expect that there's going to be some annual species when you first plant. Things come up. And by the third year, generally, you're going to have native species are coming up, the perennials are there, and you're starting to see a community. Sometimes you see it earlier, sometimes later, but those annuals tend to go away in the second or third year. They start decreasing. And this particular planting, I'm sure it was damn seed. And I think that's the problem. Not really. On this particular planting, it was 5 years down the road, and it was still like dominated by annuals. I did reading, and the thing I finally concluded that perhaps it was the problem was that the mycorrhizal, the microbial soil component was obliterated. In what I read in the Tallgrass Restoration Handbook is that this can happen. So that's one of my big things. Let's just put it here. Persistent annual phase. Well, the point here, there's a couple of points. One of them is, so did anybody ever have an amazingly good result? And maybe you, yeah. Okay. Let's hear about it.
A landowner that was buying seed did his research, took suggestions, and actually, in this case, it doesn't have to be this way, but they divided, they had their site prepped, and they controlled the weed component, and they planted their forbs in the fall, and they came back in the spring and drilled their grass into it, and they ended up with just awesome. And of course, the weather was in their favor.
Sometimes luck helps. And sounds like there was a lot of, go ahead.
No, I was saying, yeah, if all the ducks line up, it'll be really good. Otherwise, if they don't, then it'll be really bad, and it'll be like everything else.
Good management. And and good. Sounds like planting technique.
Yeah, I mean, partly they put all their worm season in the spring.
Yeah.
And it was partly because of this, they wanted lack of availability, but it worked out really good.
So when I say good, when I mean a good prairie, I don't mean that these are the good people and these are the bad people.
That isn't necessarily a recommended thing, because
No.
and also you're planting your little seedlings of forbs, but they were very careful about it. So minimal traffic trying to plant it.
Do everything the way they should. And you had an example.
Yeah, Jill McGovern and crew planted it, so it could just be of the prairie gods and goddesses. But we had this new planting, and seriously, I think this is his third growing year. And on the first growing year, we walked out there was 40 species bloomed in the first year of this planting.
In the first year, so that's planting technique, huh?
And
Okay.
also planting into corn stubble.
Mm-hmm, okay.
Beans. And then the rest, I don't know. Magic. I mean, it was a phenomenal seed mix, but exceptionally diverse.
We have one at Neil Smith Refuge that is, I hear angel choruses when I go out there, and it looks like a remnant. And I think when you get these really good plantings and they really start to work and they look like a prairie, they're starting to look like a prairie remnant, then and they start to function. There's a functional piece that starts to happen too. So we have a whole range of things that we just talked about here. And we're just scratching the surface on what affects prairie planting and influences it to become either just exactly what we dreamed of or beyond our wildest dreams or, really a piece of crap. And so there's a lot of uncertainties in this process. And we can have, all of us probably who've done very many plantings, even Dan, have had things all along this gradient. We've had things that are really substandard. and something that's, hopefully we've had these really good successes too, but there's all along that gradient, there's a whole bunch of opportunities to land anywhere. And why is that? Why is that? The thing is, we just had a whole bunch of people in this room talk about their experiences. And we've been starting to do prairie reconstructions, 40, 50 years ago, Daryl? And it picked up, especially in the 90s and from there on. And we're still having all these uncertainties about why. So there was a group of people who got together and said, you know what, this is expensive. I would add in, it's expensive to lose prairie. It's expensive for us to have plowed up prairie in terms of conservation of natural communities. So it's expensive to try to get them back. And we want to have that, we want to have success every time we do it. So what contributes to a highly successful prairie, and you can think about what success means, we can talk about that, or something that didn't work. And so this is what this group, people from different organizations got together, became the Prairie Reconstruction Initiative. And what we decided was we need to learn from each other. So we got this concept. I'm going to just sort of do some nutshell stuff so I can get to the monitoring protocol itself, how you use it. But in a nutshell, it's a crowdsourced, we have developed this crowdsourced database. And we don't care how you did your planting or any of the details, there's no good or bad. But this database includes three things, three sets of information. One was land use history. So that's one. And if you think about how many things can influence your prairie before you started. If it was cropland, what happened? How long was it cropped? What kinds of crops were on it? If corn and beans, how long was it in corn and beans? There was a biologist in the Fish and Wildlife Service in North Dakota who did a planting. Same seed mix on this field and on this field. This field worked and this one, nothing good came of it. And what she did some soil tests and found out a heavy loading of phosphorus was on that field. And so, it's important to kind of know, if you want to be as efficient as possible and effective as possible, as much as you can about the land use history as you can. So we noticed, we listed a bunch of things here. Herbicide holdover, soil hydrology is screwed up, birdfoot is still there, was a heavier load of seed from the cropland, there were gullies there. Persistent annuals, that's a phase that was I think maybe mycorrhizal or microbial issue. And there's a whole bunch more things we could put under here. And the Prairie Reconstruction Initiative listed a whole bunch of things here. And so in this database, there's a history part that you can write down as much as you can about the history, and there's fillable blanks. And it isn't like you have to know everything, but you put down as much as you can know and as much as you have time to investigate. The second piece is the planting event. And when people do plantings, and they think about their prairies and how good it was or how bad it was eventually, a lot of times they go to this planting event. What kind of seed mix did you have? What did you plant with? Was it a drill? Did you hand seed it? Was it a broadcaster? And then, what season of the year did you plant? All those kinds of things, which are valid. And there's a lot of things that can go into that. There was into both what happens to make it a good planting or a bad planting. And there was this one piece here that was weather. And that's not something that we ask people to fill in But ultimately, we can link weather to all points, all plantings. So in this database, and it's not there now, but that's one of the things that we hope to be able to link up to, so that if we had two wet winters that were warm, followed by cold spring, or you get these kinds of events, these stochastic events that, or maybe they're predictable now with climate change. But anyway, the whole point is that that part you probably can't put in. You can make notes about it if you want. But the planting event is something that is important, but it's not the only thing. And then these things over here, the third piece that we're asking people to record is their management history. I have seen many plantings that have gone really south, and I think it's because they didn't get managed, appropriately. And I think in a planting, it's much more fragile in some ways because the pieces aren't all in place, and maybe the soil microbial organisms will spread through time, but they're not there. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into management history. So, how good is my prairie? You can also say when, at what point. So these things, we just are asking people to enter those things in a database, and if you do that, you've made a contribution to learning. Again, we don't care how you do it, just write it down. And then you'll have all this information in this database, and it will be there for you. And you can say, oh, what did I do? And then you go back to this database. And then when we have a critical mass of information in this database, then we can stimulate a research effort to do an analysis and kind of tease out what sorts of things make a planting better or worse. What leads to success? So, how long do I have? Till what time? Okay, great. So, does that all make sense? Okay. Okay. So, we had a discussion about what success is. And I'm not going to go into the long list of everything, but one thing that is a measure of success certainly is, did the species that I put down on the ground come up? Did the seeds germinate and grow? Are they in my planting now? And you may have other sorts of things. If your objective, we have different objectives. And maybe it's a pollinator planting. And we want to see, so maybe one measure of success is, do we have blooming plant species, nectar sources, in all seasons of the year? So there are different things that will become measures of success depending on your objectives. What we're not doing with this whole project is looking at how to plant grass, because we know how to do that. So it's the ones that are a little more complicated, and it doesn't have to be a lot complicated. It can be something from 20 species, or it can be 250 species, but it's tailored to your objectives. We just need you to write it down and become part of the database. Okay, so if you do no monitoring, you're contributing. But if you want to take it a step farther, and you can do this, monitoring will do two things. One, it will provide additional information when we do get this research project going, when we have enough data. The second thing it does is it gives you a snapshot each time you do that monitoring to know what condition your planting is at that moment. So you do monitoring this year, you enter data into the database, and the database is live and it's ready to go right now. And there's somebody there to help you, so you don't have to just flounder. And there's a guidance book to kind of help you know how to lay things out. But one of the things is the database is live. One of the things that is coming up is to develop these routines that will give you a report, kind of a dashboard. Okay, what's my floristic quality right now? So how much like a remnant is my planting? What are my invasive pressures? You know, and you can, what species are we having troubles with? You know, you can get into a detailed analysis of that depending on what kind of monitoring you do. And, you can find out, woody species. There's a whole bunch of things you can figure out. I mean, you can glean from the monitoring data. And these simple reports that are put out by the database, for those of you in the Fish and Wildlife Service, the way things are done is there's a biologist, and that person makes the plans and the ecological plans, the planting plans in this case, and somebody else, it's blessed by the project leader, and then somebody else plants it. But you have to be able to, in that case, present it to somebody and make a case that things, we need to manage this planting this way. Or the next time we do a planting, maybe we need to tweak it this other way. And this gives you a compelling visual aid to help make your case. And it also gives you a way of understanding it through time. And you can use the numbers any way you want to. There's a lot of data there. You can analyze it however you want. All right, so that's kind of background. And now we'll get around to monitoring. Any questions at this point?
Is this database available now?
Yes.
Great. How do you get that?
Okay, so if you Google Prairie Reconstruction Initiative, it will take you to a website. And there's little videos in there that kind of give you more information about the organization, what we're doing. We also do webinars and have field days where we, try to problem solve together in different places in the Midwest. And this is in several states and includes also the mixed grass prairie too. So there's people in North and South Dakota, and there was somebody in Montana. She may not be active right now. So there's a lot of things going on besides this, but everything is meant to support this. Okay, so this is kind of dirty back here, but I'm going to turn it around. So there's two kinds of monitoring methods that we've chosen. And this was all vetted, like heavily, and it was subject to internal and external reviews, and there were a lot of people that came up with these. I mean, we wrestled with it for years just to try to get the best, what we thought were maybe the most useful methods for answering the questions that we thought we had. And so it's not just somebody pulling something out of their ear. And so here's a planting site. One of the methods is a meandering walk. And so it's also sometimes referred to as a botanist walk. And to do the monitoring, you do need to know plants. You do need to have expertise in identifying plant species, or you need to have somebody who can do it for you. And the meandering walk is just what it sounds like, You just try to cover areas, and then maybe you notice that sort of there's something in this other area that as you're walking, you might want to do a little reconnaissance before you do your meandering walk, so you kind of have an idea about where you need to hit. But as you're doing your walk, you might see a different texture of green over there. You all been there, or you see you see a different color, a different texture, and those who are experienced in this will know that you're probably going to find something different over there than where you are right here. So that's, you might want to hit that spot. Make sure you go into that spot. anyway, you cover your whole area, and it's just what it's called, a meandering walk. The botanist walk thing, that name has to do with, I'm going to pass these out so you can see what the data sheet looks like. And by the way, there's an app for this, or they're building an app for this so that you can take your iPad or your tablet out or your phone, and you can enter the data directly into that, and then directly download that data into the database. You can also use hard copy data sheets and then translate that, enter the data manually. So we kind of recommend doing this. We think about doing this somewhere about the time when sedges are blooming or slightly afterwards, so that you can it's a matter of trying to maximize, the number of species you're going to be able to catch. And it may be that you need to go back later, the asters aren't blooming yet, say, or something, and you might want to do it over again. So you do your meandering walk, and you'll notice on your sheet when you get it that there are different moisture categories, because some species will be, you may have planted different, well, you only do one planting mix. There's only one seeding mix for one monitoring kind of area. But some species will do better under wet conditions than they will under a little drier conditions. And so for statistical analysis to be valid, we've separated out wet from dry and mesic. And those are soil type issues. They're easy to look up on soils databases. NRCS, we're using the NRCS information on soils. And you'll also notice that when we're adding information here, there's something on abundance and distribution. So is a plant species that we're seeing sparse, occasional, frequent, or very common? That is not statistically analyzable, but it's highly valuable to a land manager or somebody who's trying to figure out what's going on out there. And then there's also distribution, localized or widespread. We're only seeing one butterfly milkweed here, or maybe we're seeing a whole bunch of them. So that's one of those things that makes it very useful as you're making species names in here, you're going to include invasives. So it's also going to give you an idea about that sort of thing. Now, this may seem like the lightweight way of monitoring. We also have plot monitoring, which I'll tell you in a minute. But you cannot get species richness, that is to say, the number of species present on your site, by doing plots. Because I don't know how many of you have done plot work. You lay your plot down, and year after year you go back to your plot, and dang it, there's a blazing star right there, and you haven't picked it up on any of your plot. It just doesn't, because of randomized locations. And this is very much, you're looking for as many species to get on your list as you can get on there. So, and you do this among years. We recommend an annual meandering walk. But if you do, you should use some phenological cues to tell you when to go out there and do it. I remember the February that it was like April. It got really warm, and species like New England aster were blooming in like May. It was crazy. And so what you want to do is use a phenological cue, and you say, okay, these sedges are in bloom. Okay, then it's time to go out and do my meandering walk. So that's a phenological cue. Notice there's a bunch of information at the top of that sheet. Did everybody get one? And so at the top of that sheet, it's you've got overall site, planting unit, seed mix, area name, all these things are defined in the guidance for this protocol, but just the whole point is that you may have, like if you have your overall, like University of Northern Iowa, let's say Neil Smith National Wildlife Refuge is the overall site name, and hopefully I get all this right. And then the planting unit is cabbage. We have a planting named cabbage. And then, but we planted one part of it with one seed mix, or in a different year than we did another one. So that's your seed mix name, your seed mix area name. So you can put whatever designation. Some people like to put in X5Z3295. I like to have a name in there because I can remember it. And then it has your soil moisture types, date, observer, very important. We want to know who did this, because if we end up having something exceptional in there or something unusual, even if it's the recording is kind of wonky, and go back and say, you did that well. No, we can go, it's a matter of going back, and I've done it a number of times, and say, you know, what was this? What was going on? And they go, oh, okay, now I get it. And start and end time and total time and the area searched. And that start and end time might suggest to you that you need to have it be exactly the same. It's not a timed walk. This is not a timed walk. But you want it to be roughly the same, you know, so that you can kind of compare your species lists among years. But don't obsess on that. The most important thing is to get as many species as possible. And if you add like a little appendix of a route, because something's coming up now that wasn't before in some area, you just add that onto your route and you go on. Okay?
Holly, maybe I missed this, but
yeah.
When you go to do your second walk for the year, do you suggest taking roughly the same route? Or
Yep.
do you suggest doing it totally differently?
No, you do the same route.
Same route. Okay.
And if you, again, same thing, if you need to add on to that for some reason, you just record what you did.
And that's kind of hence the reason you want roughly the same time frame.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so then the other thing then, there's this is really not going to be much of a, I told you it was a random assignment of sites, but I believe I'm wrong on that. I think what we decided on was a systematic grid. And so, you know, it is a systematic grid, and it's just what it sounds like. You know, you have your site, and you grid it out, and wherever there's the intersection of points, then you put a plot. And that's that. So, now I'm going to show you how to use the plot. And I'm excited about this because I've done a lot of monitoring through time. And the way I've done it is basically the Daubenmeier kind of technique, you know, and you put your plot out, and you count, you find each of your species, and then you estimate cover. And there's cover categories for each, you know, 0 to 1, 1 to 5, and that's all these cover categories. And then, you know, by the end of the day, my mind was about ready to shut down, because it's a lot to try to make it be the same every time. And then you do that again the next day and the next day. And then you come back the next year and you hope that you're evaluating these things in the same way. But are we really? Are we, you know, I would always think, oh, am I seeing this in the right way so that the cover estimates I'm doing last year, I'm doing this year, are similar to last year. And then if I leave, say I retire or something, and then somebody else comes in and takes my place and starts monitoring, there's a lot of observer error, a lot of potential for observer error. So there's been this way of monitoring that takes that problem out of the equation. And it's this nested plot technique. There's some research that was done, not by us, but by a scientist who came up with this, and Diane Larson of USGS helped us get this, she's part of our team, get this figured out. And this is the frame you use. It's a PVC frame very cheap and easy to make. We did have PVC in these, where these bungee cords are. And Karen Visti-Sparkman, biologist at Neil Smith, came up with this, which makes it kind of easy, as you'll see why in a minute here. But this is probably the hardest thing to grasp without a visual. And I did have some props where I could lay it down on the ground and it would be like plants there and we would go through a plot. But that's not going to work in a situation like this. So we're going to do a little imaginary prairie on the blackboard. A frame. Monitoring frame. Yep. 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 It's our nested plot monitoring frame. And so now we're going to think about some species are common throughout our planting. And those are kind of everywhere, And I started making this, and I decided I'm going to wait until you all were here, because we'll just do it. Then I think you'll visualize it better. So these are big blue stems. And this is our prairie here, this chalkboard. So here we got another big blue stem here and here. They're just kind of, we're going to have a very simple prairie, only about 5 species. But it's the big blue stem is just, you're going to see them kind of everywhere. And then we've got, let's say we have a black-eyed Susan. And that one's pretty common too. Maybe not quite as common as the big blue stem. And now we've got a prairie violet. We're going to put our prairie violet, in our prairie, our little piece of a prairie here, there's only one. There's its excerpted, I guess that's a birdfoot violet. All right, we have a birdfoot violet there. All right, so we have a violet. What other species? What would be some intermediate ones? Say what? Echinacea. Yeah, good. I got a pink chalk. Whoop. There we've got a lot of pale purple coneflowers in here. How about a creamy indigo? All right, creamy indigo. Oh man, harder. We'll make a stylized creamy indigo. Can't make it too big. We're running out of space. Those don't look anything like a legume. And hopefully you can tell those from the I'm going to make one more, and that's going to be, I don't have an orange one. I'm going to make the initials because we're running out of colors. So this one is going to be butterfly milkweed. Butterfly milkweed. Okay, that's it. That's it. So the most common plants in our prairie are going to be, by definition, pretty much everywhere. So if you look at this frame is a half meter by a meter. That's how big the frame is. So if it's a half of a, many people are accustomed to using a meter square for their monitoring. And so if you put your frame out on the ground, you would do it on the ground, not on the chalkboard. If you put it out here and you look at everything in there that you need to look at, then you turn it over, and now you have a whole meter. Okay, make sense? then you have a meter square. So this whole way of monitoring relates to the size of these boxes. Here's our, let's say our systematic plot put us right here. And so on our sheet, on our monitor, our data sheet, we have a place for, I'm going to take this down for a minute. So we can go through how you record the data. We have different sizes of squares, of blocks. And if you look just above where you write the information down, it says nested plot sizes. And I'm going to just show you what those sizes are in a minute here. But there's, so you can write down on that column, you write your species down. Let's say in the top one you've got Andropogon gerardii, or whatever the new name is for it. And then you put down which plot you saw it in. So you'll start with 1, or which subplot. So 1 is the smallest one. You put 1 in there. And then for each species, you do fill it out for the smallest plot. Those are the things that show up in the smallest area are most likely to be the most common plants that you're going to see on your prairie. Okay, so, and we have all of the information at the top that was the same, basically the same as what you've seen before. Okay, so we have our frame, and we have it set up here, and this piece right here is the smallest piece. And we monitor everything that's in this smallest block. It has to be rooted into that block. So if our pale purple coneflower is rooted outside this frame, we don't count it. But we're going to say that it is. So in this smallest the smallest block, we've got big blue stem, and I'm going to just use common names just to make it easier. Big blue stem and pale purple coneflower. Now, it doesn't mean that pale purple coneflower is necessarily as common as big blue stem, but it might be, but so we just go through and we write down everything that we see. All right, so we write those 2 species down, and they're in subplot 1. Yeah, that would be so good. Make it easier. Yeah. Thanks, Leo. Yeah, no. Okay, so this is subplot 1, and it's the smallest. Now, so we're writing down frequency information. And then the next biggest plot is double this. It's this piece right here. So we've doubled the area. We don't need to write this down again because we've already done that. So now we're going to write only the things that we find in here. And we've got a big blue stem right here. It's rooted in this, but we don't count it. We don't write it down because we already have it. We already know big blue stem is in the smallest plot. So we don't have to write it down again. We don't have to duplicate those things. All right. So then we're going to double this. This is what we just monitored. Now we're going to double it again. So we're going to add this piece. And now we have black-eyed Susan. We have a big blue stem there too, but we don't have to write that down because we already got it. All right, so now, does that all make sense so far? You following me? Okay, so now we're going to double it again, and we're going to add this area. And so we've got a pale purple coneflower and butterfly milkweed. That's a new one. We need to write that one down. There's 2 butterfly milkweeds in here. Do we need to write it down twice? No. We're only writing down when we see it the first time. Okay, so we've got everything in. This one didn't quite make the cut. It's outside. So now we're going to flip it over. And there we are. Now we've got a black-eyed Susan, a pale purple coneflower, a big blue stem. Uh-oh. We got a prairie violet. Actually, this is going to be the whole thing now. And, you know, and you can take all this stuff out if you want. But because we had everything, we had done the smallest, this size, and then this size, and now we're doing the full meter square plot. So we're adding the whole frame in here. And like I say, you can pull these things out. Oh, Baptisia is in. So everything in here that we haven't recorded up to this point, we now record. And that includes our prairie violet and our Baptisia. Everything else we've already captured. So that's how we record our data, which is a whole lot less mind-numbing than trying to do cover estimates.
And then do we do that at that intersection? Is that where we do that?
Yeah. At these, wherever your grid mark is. And the whole protocol will tell you how to snap a grid onto your map. And this technique will give you much greater precision. This will give you information that can be statistically analyzed, and it can tell you very precisely how the plant community is changing through time. You don't need to do this every year. This is much more labor intensive, but it gives you information that you can't get with the meandering walk. The meandering walk gets you information you can't get with this. So in tandem, they work pretty good. The meandering walk tends to be pretty popular with people, and people are doing it pretty much every year so far. We're really early in the phases of this whole project in terms of implementation, though there have been people who've been doing it for a few years now. But
About 5 minutes left before we go to our break and then to the breakout discussion.
thank you. And so I'm just sort of finishing now too. So those, I guess that's it. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
There's the protocol is available too. That's got all the details, right?
Right. So the protocol is available, and Justin is on our team. And so if you Google Prairie Reconstruction Initiative, you'll be able to get that link that'll take you to a thing called ServCat, which is where Fish and Wildlife Service puts all of their important documents. And so you can get that protocol document, and it'll also give you guidance. Amanda McCulpin is the person who's right now helping people figure out how to get their data, get started with entering data in the database, and we intend to continue having support through time. Yeah?
I love it. I love the way you explain that. I wish I had thought of that. But I have taught students how to do this in the field. And just for those of you who haven't done it before, it sounds laborious, but once you get going, really fast, it's really simple.
It's amazing.
It's not bad.
It's so much. Thank you for that. It's so much easier than the other way of some of those other ways, the ones that require the cover.
And do you have a rule of thumb of how many of these quadrats you need to do?
It's a relative thing, and there's some guidance in the document that'll help you. And yeah, some of the statistician that we use from USGS, I'm trying to remember because I've done 2 protocols now, the Savannah Monitoring Protocol, is just about to be blessed. Yeah, it has to do, what was it, Justin? It's like no more than 20.
Yeah, so 10 is the minimum for, I think, a lot of folks here.
And no more than 20.
I think it's
80 for an 80-acre area, no more than 20, no less than 10, or something like that. I think that's what it is. Anything else? Thank you. You guys have been great. Yep.